Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of GC Live, talking Tuesday nights. South Carolina coming off a disappointing loss last weekend against Georgia, but that's all right. It's one game. Got to move on and get ready for the rest of the schedule in front of you. Big game coming up this weekend against Charlotte, trying to find just some type of rhythm, trying to find some confidence. And then you got South Carolina State. So two games that, on paper, you should be able to win. Okay, I know there's going to be a lot of people and chime in, right? We got comment section on the right. If you're listening on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, chime in. Let us know how you feel. We'll also be able to open up the phone lines. Intern Joe is back with us today. So if you want to be able to call in and enjoy the program, do that. And I will have that number posted for you guys on the side in case you want to do that. But we got a lot to talk about tonight. We have a lot to talk about. There was some information that came out just a little while ago that we saw on social media that I do want to discuss. We're going to talk about the SEC schedule that will be released in just a little bit as well. But here you go. Here's the number if you want to call into the program. Again, does not matter where you come today. 803-567-3796. Again, 803-567-3796. Here is the number in case you are listening on Twitter or wherever. You just need to be able to dial that number into your phone so you can have. Boy, where do we want to begin tonight? Because we hit a lot of it over the weekend. We hit on it a lot on Mixing the Water Monday, talking about it on Monday with former Gamecock quarterback Michael Scarnecchia. Let's just call it for what it is. What we saw from South Carolina last weekend was pathetic. There's no other way to put it. It was pathetic. But at the same time, too, they went up against a team that is just in a different class than you right now. Sorry, just call it for what it is. You know, people will get all sensitive sometimes when they say, oh, we have the same talent. You don't. You don't have the same talent. And that's the reason why Shane Beamer and this coaching staff have done what they've done since they've got here, which is they have been relentless when it comes to recruiting. And that's why you have guys like the Pup Howards of the world taking to social media after the game saying, hey, Columbia, you guys are in good hands. You're in good hands. So I do want to be able to hit on some of those things that we saw from this weekend. But I also want to hit on what this means for this program moving forward. Where do they go from here as they get ready now for a Charlotte team who's feeling good about themselves? They're feeling very good, being able to take down a team that you struggled with week one in Georgia State. So you have a team that, again, and I know there's going to be people that are going to be looking back to that game last week, seeing what Charlotte did, and give them credit. Give them credit. But at the same time, too, I'm not going to sit here and be like South Carolina shouldn't beat Charlotte because of what we saw against Georgia last week or what we've seen 3 weeks into the season. They should be able to beat Charlotte. You're a better team. You have better talent. Just comes down to just going out there and executing. Now, it could be a little deeper than that sometimes. You could talk about the scheme. You could talk about the play calling. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to make it happen. You got to be able to make it happen. I'm going to start looking at some of the comments from people sending stuff in. Travis, he says, what's up, GC Live? Prime time. It is prime time Tuesday night. We appreciate you listening, Travis. Again, the SEC is set to release their schedule for the 2023 season. As soon as South Carolina slate comes out, we will discuss on this very platform. So if you guys want to chime in, let us know. There's the number again, 803-567-3796 to be able to join the program. Going through some of these comments, Lady Bree, excuse me. There was good O-line play 2 games straight. That's good news, guys. I think we're going to have a good season. Look, was the offense perfect last week? Certainly not. Goes without saying. But Lady Bree's right. The offensive line, it wasn't perfect, but it was something that it was an improvement in comparison to what we saw from week one in trying to be able to put your head on something to be able to hold yourself up a little bit, right? That's something that we saw. That is something that we saw, and I'm glad that you pointed that out because, again, still some flaws in this offense, but they need to be able to find something to be able to build off of. So the fact that you're going up against the best defense, if not one of the best defenses in the country in Georgia, and they were able to do what they did. Um, in terms of just being able to find some little lanes, right? I mean, they were able to make some lanes for the running back, but it's just not going to really show. And it wasn't enough. Certainly wasn't enough against Georgia. So again, it's not making excuses. The game's over with, man. I mean, it's over with. It's not changing anything. But ultimately, you got to be able to find something that you can point to and be like, all right, what did we do good in this game? If anything, sometimes there's not going to be a lot. Certainly, this is the case. But the offensive line, if you want to at least try to find something to smile at, other than Juju McDowell and what he was able to do when he had his opportunities out there, what we saw from a guy like Nick Eamon-Worry, who just continues to play out of his mind. I think Brad Crawford tweeted out today that he leads the country in solo tackles. So I'll give Brad credit for that, putting that out there. Intern Joe's with us. Intern Joe, let us know when those lines are ringing. I saw one phone call here. Not sure if your end's working, so I just want to make sure we are good to go. Might be one coming in right now. We'll find out who that is, and we'll get the program rolling here from taking calls. But again, that's not to say the offense is everything's all sunshine and rainbows with it. I just think that you need to be able to look at it when you go back and watch the film, be like, all right, was there anything? Really? Was there anything? And I think that was something that was a positive, if you could say it was a positive. I don't know if Patrick necessarily agrees with me. We're going to add in Patrick here. Patrick, you're on the GC Live post-game show. Or post-game show. Give me, I'm already losing my mind. Patrick, you're on the GC Live Talking Tuesday show. Patrick.
Go ahead.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I actually I agree with a lot with what you're saying, Mike. I feel like these next 2 weeks are really important for us, and we gotta, defense. We gotta get healthy defensively, and offensively, we just need to find some type of rhythm within like the scheme and the offensive line. I just think that now is a good time for us to heal up and just figure some stuff out. I don't think the schedule, kind of worked out into us being allowed to like figure stuff out, because you play a really good Georgia State team and then you go immediately into SEC play against two top 10 teams, and one of them is the returning national champions. And that just doesn't, work out for you in hopes of figuring some stuff out offensively. And it's not really great for, the health of your team, because, the SEC, we're just so physical in this conference.
No, I agree with you. And I think, look, at the end of the day, and I know some people just don't want to look at it for what it is, you had a very difficult schedule set up before the start of the season. And I think that the challenging part is it's a combination of a couple things. It's the fact that if you start off 1-2 like they have already, that's going to play a big part of it. But it's just the style and the manner in which they've got to 1-2, and just not being able to really hold their head on anything after week 3. And Tommy, you bring up a good point. Look, everyone's willing to talk about the offense, but forgetting the defense is just as bad. I think the thing about the defense, though, Tommy, is South Carolina was down 5 starters last week. 5 starters. They're going to be down 2 starters at least for the next couple of weeks, if not the rest of the season. We know that already with Jordan Strawn out in Mokaba. But I'm not saying I'm not concerned about the defense, but let's give it, let's give it these next couple of weeks going into that Kentucky game. But Patrick, I mean, is there anything in particular that makes you feel good about this team through 3 weeks? Because I know a lot of people, it's been difficult to find something good. I don't think Patrick's there with us anymore, but maybe he'll say Nick Eamon-Worry. Maybe he'll say Juju McDowell. I mean, I feel like that's been certainly something that we saw this past week, and that you were able to at least smile about. But look, at the end of the day, you need to be able to move on from this loss. Goes without saying. Goes back to what Patrick was saying that I mentioned right after the game, which is you need to get healthy. You need to get healthy. I mean, it feels like it's a broken record every freaking year with South Carolina, and I'm sure a lot of you are sick and tired of it. It's just the way it goes sometimes in sports, not just football. So the good news is Corey Rucker did practice today, and you're hoping you're going to be able to see him out on the field. Now, with that all being said, that's another weapon out there. We can mention other weapons, though. Jaheim Bell, Josh Van, Jalen Brooks. We could keep going down the list. You have to be able to get the ball to these playmakers. You have to. South Carolina wasn't able to do that last week. Now, in large part, because Georgia just is on another level right now when it comes to playing defense. I know Gamecock fans probably don't want to give him his flowers, but give Will Muschamp his flowers. Give that defensive coaching staff their flowers for what they were able to do last week. Because, man, I mean, if you're just a fan of football and you watched a lot of the pre-snap alignments that Georgia had, just moving around, creating confusion. I mean, shoot, one of them actually led to South Carolina jumping offside. Full start. So I say that because what they saw against Georgia, maybe other than Clemson at the end of the year, that's the best defense they're going to see all season. So, look, we can sit here, we can say, all right, season's over, a bunch of bums, this and that. You want to do that, fine. Go apple picking. Go do something other than watching football. Get ready for the state fair a couple weeks. Get yourself some cotton candy. I'm not doing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, fans or just people that want to be able to watch this team from an entertainment standpoint, media standpoint, wanting to know where they go from here. Now, if they lay an egg against Charlotte, yeah, grab the panic button. Grab the panic button 1,000%. I'm just not there yet. I'm not there just because I figured that it would take this team probably until week 4 to really start clicking offensively. Are they a little bit further behind than where I anticipated them to be? Certainly. No question about it. Are there concerns about the defense? Absolutely. Because while I sit here and, going back to what Tommy mentioned, we're going to talk about the defense, about being bad. Yes, they were down 5 starters the other day. They're going to be down 2, as I alluded to, for the remainder of the year. But at the same time, too, those other 3 guys, they need to be able to come back and be healthy. And it's something that South Carolina is going to have to overcome. And not just overcome, but they're going to have to find other guys, too, that can step up. They have to be able to find guys that can step up. You want to talk about what makes a good team, you need to be able to have depth. And certainly that goes back to recruiting, and you can go down that rabbit hole. But that's where South Carolina is right now. Trying to pull up some of the other questions here that we have or comments. Noah, if Beamer would hire someone like Riles to, okay, we're not going to go Art Riles. I mean, come on, Noah. Come on, man. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Hunter, was Josh Van's blog with Darius Rush supposed to be released? I hope that doesn't tear the team apart. Hunter, I'm glad you brought it up. I was talking to intern Joe beforehand. I don't know if he has any thoughts on it. Might have him just hop on with me for a minute. Joe, when you saw that, and I don't know if your mic's unmuted, when you saw that, what was going through your mind? And for those of you that don't know what happened, I wish I had the transcript for you so I can play it, but I'm paraphrasing here, and we will we can just basically just tell you what was said. Darius Rush and Josh Van podcast that they were doing together, and Josh, I don't think any ill intent, or it wasn't meant to be ill will, but what he brought up was the fact that it was something that's like, hey, I'm not trying to take a shot, but it came across as a shot. Joe, if you want to play that video, we can do that so people can hear it directly, so I don't even have to paraphrase.
Yeah, I got you. 1 sec.
Let intern Joe get that set up. I'll let Joe get that ready, and when he gives me a thumbs up, I'll have him on, and we'll be able to show you guys that video that we're talking about. But again, this is going to be interesting to see how that goes over in the locker room. And we'll put this on.
I know it was one time, not to bash the coaching, coaching them like that, but it was like third down, and we called a play that we haven't went over in like 3 weeks. So mind you, as a player, you got to know the whole playbook. So whenever something may get thrown on you, so you can know what it is, and you go out and execute, line up fast. But at the same time, we haven't went over it, so you can't expect, in the heat of a moment, for somebody to like recognize on the fly, to know what to do. So it was just little simple mistakes from players and coaches. But like you said, Arkansas is behind us. I know it was one time, not to bash the coaching, coaching them like that, but
So I hear that. And look, as someone that played in college, all that kind of stuff, right? This stuff happens. This stuff's being discussed daily amongst players. Okay. You're crazy if you don't think it is going on. It happens amongst players. Even when things are all sunshine and rainbow, at least on the outside, that's how it looks like, right? This happens all the time. So again, I don't think Josh meant any ill will, and it's not even necessarily a Josh thing. It's just looking big picture. And Joe, I don't know if you necessarily agree with where I'm going with this, is that you hear these comments, the stuff that is being said on the outside, and I'm not saying it's the direct reason why, but it does have an influence on the inside, especially when you're dealing with college kids. What is being said on the outside, it's impossible to ignore when you have one of these days. So I say all that, and that's not saying fans are the issue, media is the issue, and that's not what I'm saying. They know what's going on. And what's going on right now is the fact that you weren't able to really do anything offensively, or at least be able to have any type of consistency on offense. You go back to last season, the conversations that people had amongst the fan base, amongst some of the media, amongst some of the players, from the conversations that I've had with people close to the program. Yeah, certainly there's a lot of people pointing the finger at Marcus Satterfield and just the play calling. And all that's going to do right now is it's going to crank up just the intensity a little bit more. I mean, it's SEC football. It's big boy football. Satterfield understands that. These players understand that. Shane Beamer understands that. So with that all being said, because this is something we already know, how do you respond to it? Because if this is how some of the players feel, and again, this is just one voice, but I can tell you right now, and it's not picking on Josh, it's using him as an example. If a player is going public saying something like this, which I don't think it's the end of the world based on what he said, but it's the fact that it's being pushed out to the outside, right? Now the things that are discussed internally are going outside. It makes me believe that he's not the only one that feels that way internally. Internally, meaning in that locker room, in that program. And if they don't have a good performance offensively, I'm not talking about having to score 30, 40, 50 points. I'm talking about being able to go out there, execute the plays, be able to have some type of scheme and system in place that you're able to feel good about yourself after this week's game against Charlotte. Obviously, you have to get the win too, because that goes without saying, so that you have SC State the next week. You can be able to build off that, and then you going back into the SEC on the road against Kentucky. I'm not super concerned about this, Joe, right now, but man, if they have struggles, and it goes the complete opposite way of what I just said, then I don't know. I don't know what that locker room is going to be like. That's just based off of experience of being in a locker room, and that's just looking at the situation that South Carolina potentially could have when you hear comments like that. So throwing this out there, Marcus Satterfield, the coordinators are scheduled to speak tomorrow. I'm sure that will be a question that will be addressed. I'm sure he'll downplay it, but it's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Joe, who we have on the line?
We have our good friend Bree. Bree, go ahead.
Hey, Mike. Hey, you know what, man? I retweeted that, and I had a different take. And then as we're reviewing that video, he said Arkansas is behind us. I'm wondering if this video had nothing to do with Georgia, possibly, and like, we're all probably sitting there going, "Oh, I bet it's when he made that call to have DK come in and just do a wildcat formation." But he didn't say Georgia in that video. I'm wondering if this is like a leak of a video from like last week somehow. We're all kind of probably just assuming, oh, it was something from this Georgia game. And most of us probably assuming, oh, yeah, it was that big, wildcat formation deal. I don't know, but when I rethought that, I was just like, wait, we're all kind of jumping to conclusions. But he said Arkansas on that video.
I don't think. Look, I think at the end of the day, regardless, Arkansas, Georgia. I mean, I know the play you're talking about. I don't think that has anything really to. I wouldn't say anything to do with it. Putting DK out there on 3rd and 6. I think it's more of a microcosm of what the big picture is in the concerns and the issues that some players may have. And again, this is more so speculating right now, but this is based off of experience I have both, as a former player, as well as someone that's been covering not just this team, but the SEC now for 8 years. So I say that because when you see situations like this that go out publicly, and sometimes, it's not necessarily, especially in this new era of NIL, we're going to see players have podcasts more. We're going to start seeing new things like this. It doesn't have to be that way. It could be sometimes when you're talking in front of the cameras on media, your media availability after a game or earlier in the week. So I say all that because, again, I don't think Josh meant any ill will towards Marcus or the coaching staff, but it's just the things that are discussed internally amongst players that happen every day. I mean, there's going to be things sometimes that it's not even a Shane Beamer thing. It's your coaches do. As players, you're going to be like, oh, man, it just happens naturally. Doesn't Alabama, Nick Saban, greatest college football coach of all time. Guarantee you that's happening every day over there. And it's not even necessarily the guys at the bottom of the depth chart. It's the guys sometimes that are the leaders of the team, of your team. So I just bring that up because this happens everywhere across the country. The issue is that something was said
it was internal
out to the public now. And that's the concern.
That's
because
what my tweet said too. That's what my retweet said.
So,
the big
and Lady
issue
Bree, I'll let you.
internal thing.
Yeah. And Lady Bree, I'll let you finish up. I want to bring this up though. So you have all this going on.
I'm right there with you. The only reason I said that was because my initial thought was that it was about a specific play, and probably most fans look at that and go, oh, I bet they were talking about that play. You know what I mean? And then I realized looking at that video that actually might have been talking about the Arkansas game, and it might have just been a part of a more general discussion where they were probably just sitting there going, dude, yeah, I messed up. Dude, yeah, I messed up. Dude, even the coaches made a bad call, man. They sent us out there and we didn't even know what freaking play it was because we hadn't ran it. And everybody had messed up. Only problem is like you said, it's all over the internet now. That's an internal thing we should have never heard. But I'm kind of looking at it, I'm trying to get a more positive light out of it, I guess, because after I thought about it a little bit and it being after the Arkansas game potentially, it might sound a little different to the public that way,
No, I know. And Bree, I appreciate you taking the time to call into the program. I think, look, bottom line is this. How things play out this week against Charlotte can really derail just the demeanor of this team. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative or think for the worst, but I just think it's the reality of it. I'm not saying that, South Carolina were to lose this week against Charlotte, the season's over, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you got a difficult schedule ahead of you. And it's not even about wins and losses right now. It's about being able just to keep everyone on the same page. And I feel like they have the talent in the room. Especially in the offensive side. Defense, look, we'll talk about defense in a little bit. The reason we're spending so much time on the offense is because this goes back to last season. There were people that were disappointed with how the offense looked at times. I mean, the best performances that South Carolina had last year were coming off an extra week or two. You think back to the beginning of the season, Eastern Illinois, first game of the year, goes without saying. Florida, coming off a bye week. And then, of course, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. He had a couple weeks to be able to prepare for that. Marcus Satterfield has been able to put this team in positions to have success. But for whatever reason, the consistency just hasn't been there. So again, he's going to be judged a lot this week. That's not to say that his seat is hot, but certainly when you look at the entirety of the season, games like this can play a big role. But I think, as Michael Skarnecki has said the other day, you need to be able to find ways to just incorporate some of your talented guys that you just haven't been able to get the ball to, and it's not even just the Marcus Satterfield thing. It's a coaching staff thing, and as well as the quarterbacks, not just Spencer, but the quarterbacks as a whole. What are they seeing? Or guys just, receivers, running back. What are people seeing out there that maybe a guy or two is missing? And being able to add your input so you can be able to find ways to get this thing back on the right track. But again, hearing stuff like this, I'm not going to look at it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. Again, players say this every day across the country, even at programs like Alabama, Georgia. It happens. It doesn't matter what level it is. It's just the fact that it came out publicly. And I don't think it was meant to create this, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Because it's not shocking to hear it. It's just the fact that it was said publicly. But that's the new era that we live in with NIL. And you're going to have to be able to be careful when you say some of these things, because you just don't know the added distractions that it may create. Again, Marcus Satterfield is expected to speak tomorrow with the media during his weekly media availability. And I'm sure that's going to be something that gets brought up. So it's just something extra that they have to deal with now. But I don't think Josh has been doing this too long. I think he's probably a little frustrated. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that just the team as a whole is a little frustrated. And they want to be able to find ways to get this thing heading in the direction that they truly believe they can, because this team still has plenty of football ahead of them. And even like I said before the start of the season, I had them going 1-2 to start the year and being able to get things going at week 4, week 5, and then heading into Kentucky. So it starts this week. It really does. It starts this week. That's not to say that the last 3 weeks didn't mean anything, but it starts this week, because if you cannot take that step forward this week against Charlotte, I don't know. I don't know where you go from here. Because you have 2 games on your schedule that you should be able to win. So that is looking at that. The schedule for the SEC just came out. We're going to pop that up in just a little bit. I do want to be able to get back to some of your comments now before we start looking ahead to next season. I want to continue to bring up the messages that you guys have submitted. Again, if you guys want to send a comment in, whether you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, doesn't matter. Send it on in, and you guys can give us a call into the program as well. Trey says, thanks, caller. 2 top 10 teams. One is run heavy, and the other has a hell of a team. Number 1. Absolutely. That's it. I mean, Georgia's just on a different level right now. It just is what it is. That's a team that if they can stay healthy, they should be right in the mix to be able to make the college football playoff, be in the SEC championship game. Travis says the most important number the next 2 weeks is 40. We need 40 rushing attempts per game. I didn't know where you were going to go with that at first, with that 40. I like the 40, though, because, again, give Charlotte credit for what they did against Georgia State, but you should be able to beat these 2 teams. So one of the ways that you should be able to beat them is being able to run the football. And if you're able to go out there and establish the run, it's going to be able to do a couple things, obviously, from a playbook standpoint, but it's going to do something that this team desperately needs. They need confidence. I'm not saying that a certain positional group's lacking it or certain players lacking it, but just as a cohesive unit, you're able to start running the football. The offensive line, they love that stuff. They love being able to put their hand into the dirt and then just being able to go and block. They love that. So run the football. Be able to have success. Be able to get into a rhythm so that teams aren't necessarily just putting their hands into the dirt and knowing, hey, it's going to be pass, 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 pass. It's great that you have a guy like Spencer Rattler who can throw the ball over the yard when he's clicking, but you need to be able to mix it up. You can't become a one-trick pony. It just makes it a hell of a lot easier for a defense to be able to have their way with you. So certainly need to be able to run the football. in taking the pressure off Spencer Rattler. Absolutely. Linus goes, I think we'll see some design rollouts this week, but it's a little late. I think there's things in the playbook that we haven't seen quite yet. It's like, oh, shocker, Mike. But I'm not even talking about trick plays. I'm talking more so formations. I'm talking more so things that South Carolina feels like they can be good at, but maybe they just didn't feel as comfortable with rolling out the first couple weeks, knowing that you have Arkansas week 2, knowing that you have Georgia week 3, and that you have a quarterback that's trying to get comfortable in a new system, in a new scheme, and new players around him. So I wouldn't be shocked to see different wrinkles over the next couple weeks. Maybe we start to see one of them this week against Charlotte. Season isn't over by far. We're talented enough to win out minus Clemson. Again, if they're able to get the win against Charlotte and South Carolina State in a manner in which you feel good about the offense, that should make you feel better about Kentucky. Kentucky is playing very good football right now, but just because what we saw against Arkansas and Georgia, week 2 and week 3 of that, I think it's premature to say, okay, they can't be able to beat this team or that team. I'm not buying that. I need to be able to see what they can do these next 2 weeks. I think it's going to be very telling. Dre, again, I'm highly encouraged. Continually should be developed. Continuity, should be developed in the next couple weeks. I agree. And Dre, I'm going to bring up your comment again. Man, great. That's what it comes down to. Continuity, confidence, throw all the C words out. Coaching, competing, it's the God's honest truth. You need to be able to do all those things this week. All those things this week to be able to feel not just good about yourself heading back into the SEC slate, but feeling good when you have to take on Kentucky and where you are. And knowing that, hey, look, this is a program that historically, hasn't had a lot of success. But you know what? There's a reason why there was a lot of buzz this offseason. They have talented guys. They do. It just hasn't been clicking the way that it should, at least in terms of not from a win-loss standpoint, but in terms of just what do they need to do to be able to keep heading in the right direction as the season progresses. Good thing is, look, outside of Clemson, and that's not to write off Kentucky or Tennessee or, Florida, whoever you want to insert in there, but Georgia's the best team that you're going to play all season. Maybe Clemson's able to figure things out from an offensive standpoint because their defense is very good, but Georgia's the most complete team, at least right now, that I believe you'll see this season. Continuing to scroll down, trying to get some of these message in there that you guys have. Tony, I feel like the next couple of games, get the offense going and get some confidence going. Absolutely. Absolutely, Tony. Trying to pull some of these up. If Rattler wasn't a big name transfer, we'd be playing Doty more, just considering the QB play. And Mike, I don't know if you necessarily mean this, and I don't know if you're going exactly in this place, but I want to just bring it up. Some, and I know it's not everyone, some people have brought up, all right, hey, why don't we give Doty a try? I love Luke. I think Luke is a heck of a player. I really do. And the fact that he's coming back from that foot injury, he's not going to be the same type of player as he was a year ago. He's going to be better. Okay. He was hurt last year. And that's the reason why eventually he needed surgery. I say all that because, and I said this on a Clemson show today, and I hop on, give Gamecock updates each week. You could put Trevor Lawrence out there when he was playing at Clemson for USC these last couple of weeks. It's not going to make a difference right now. It's just not. Because the offense just isn't clicking as a whole. So, again, what do you do? What do you do? Well, it starts this week. Against Charlotte. And if you're not able to do it against Charlotte, I don't know what you assume is going to happen the rest of the way. I really don't. I don't know how you can feel good about yourself if you cannot be able to take care of Charlotte from an offensive standpoint. Again, we're not even talking about the defense. That's a whole nother concern. But offensively, you have to be able to find a way to establish, as cliche as it sounds, and I hate when people throw this phrase around, but establish some type of identity. I think that's as simple as it gets right now for South Carolina. And Ashley brings up that podcast was Josh and Darius recapping Arkansas. They uploaded it one day last week. So thank you, Ashley, and we'll use Ashley's word. I don't know if Joe might be able to find that out. I know Joe's got the schedule on the other side, so we're going to pull that up in a second, but just want to go through some of these comments that you guys had before I get into it. But regardless, whether it be Arkansas, whether it be after the Georgia game, the fact that those comments are coming out, it's just not good. You keep certain things internally. You keep them in-house. The fact that that's coming out, and it's not even the pick on Josh or Darius. I mean, those are two guys that are good leaders in that locker room. They're frustrated right now. That was a comment that was more so just showing what it's like to be on the other side of it in terms of being a student athlete. Because as I mentioned earlier, if you're just joining the show, this happens across the country every day, every program, stuff like that's being said, where it's not like it's like, ill will or ill intent. No, it's just football players, man, just athletes. Just that's how it goes. Going through some of these comments again, R.L. Smith, weird Rattler rank among SEC QBs since 2012. Oof. Oh, boy. Well, I'll say this, RL. Certainly the way that things have gone right now for South Carolina, it wouldn't be that high right now, just based on production, right? If we're grading it simply on production, it wouldn't be that high right now. That doesn't mean that can't change as the season goes on. But right now, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's a certain number, certainly not high, based on production, not based off skill, not based off talent, not based off of how many stars they had coming out of high school or when they went into the transfer portal, based on production, based on what the stats are telling you, based off of what the eye test is telling you. Not that high right now. But that's not to say where he would be graded right now, where he would be ranked among those QBs. And it says for South Carolina, excuse me. I thought it was SEC, but South Carolina quarterback still not that high. Still not that high. I mean, shoot, throw Orth in there. I mean, excuse me, Garcia in there. You could throw Connor Shaw in there. I mean, we could keep going down. It's not to say that he's a bad quarterback by any means. We have 3 games, and one of those games was against the number 1 team in the country with the best defense in the country. And then week 1 was against a team that for the first time you're going out there with your new teammates and you're trying to figure things out. So I appreciate the question, but we'll see how things kind of play out over the next couple of weeks. And I got intern Joe in the background, Bentley. Look, people can say what they will about Bentley. And I'm not saying Bentley didn't have his flaws. He certainly had his flaws, but he made a lot of things happen with the pieces he had around him. And say what you will, but I mean, that was musical chairs at offensive coordinator too. I mean, there was a new OC, it felt like every year for a good portion of time. So again, I think it's too early to decide where exactly he is on that. We'll see how things kind of play out. Want to continue to scroll down some of these comments, but before we do that, Joe, let's add in on the schedule here that was just announced by the SEC. And we knew some of these matchups were going to take place, right? We knew that North Carolina would be played in Charlotte. We knew that, you get the Clemson game in there. You knew that there was going to be Furman. But look where Georgia is. Week 3 again. In Georgia. Okay? Mississippi State. That will be the crossover game next year, 2023. You'll have Texas A&M in there as well. So when you look over for the crossover games, Mississippi State and Texas A&M. Joe, what's your initial thoughts seeing this? As we unmute you. Talking to the mic, Joe. Joe, you got to unmute yourself. Gotta love intern Joe. I think there was
Now
a.
we're good. Yeah,
Here we go.
took a day off. Need to readjust, but no, I mean I like it. I think Mike Leach coming to Columbia, bringing the air raid to Columbia is going to be fun. And then I also like the Jacksonville State game, the Gamecocks playing the Gamecocks. You can take that with all your irony and whatnot. I think that's pretty funny. And then we moved Vanderbilt back, adds just a little bit more of a buffer going into Kentucky and Clemson towards that back half of the schedule. So, I mean, I like the way it's set up next year, and, it's going to be fun.
And you look at it again, just that Georgia matchup on the road, fairly early on in the year. I'm trying to zoom in on here. I'm probably doing a bad job here. But you see that Georgia matchup, that week three. I mean, look, bottom line is this. We know Georgia's not going anywhere. We know Georgia's going to be a team that's going to be in the mix to compete for not just SEC titles, but national championships. And never mind the fact of, okay, what's things going to look like with Oklahoma and Texas in the next couple of years. We'll worry about that when we get there. The reality is, though, that Georgia is a good team. We saw that last week. And you have to play them early on in the year. So it's obviously premature to say, okay, Rattler won't be back, or this was going to happen, or that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to have a tough matchup week one. Anytime you have the balls to play a Power 5 team, when you are a Power 5 team, especially SEC, ACC, Big 10, Pac-12. I don't know what you want to call the Big 12 anymore. But when you have the balls to do that, you're putting a lot on the line, because you're not going to have everything installed the way that you would typically if you do have a quote-unquote, cupcake week one, or a lesser opponent that you should be able, an inferior opponent that you should be able to take care of. That's not going to be the case. You're playing North Carolina week one. So, and it's going to be in Charlotte. And you don't think that there's going to be guys on that team that are pissed off still about the Duke's Mayo Bowl? They're going to keep that in mind. Then you got Furman. Then you got Georgia. Won't be easy. Then you got to take on Mississippi State. So look, at the end of the day, it's the SEC. We know the schedule never gets easy for South Carolina. It's not going to be easy for a lot of these teams. You know what the difference is? A team like Georgia, they've had a lot of success. They don't look at you the same way that you look at them. They don't look at a team like Kentucky right now, or Tennessee, or whoever. They don't look at them the same way that you do. And that's okay. You're trying to build something. You're trying to do something that hasn't been consistent and hasn't just had the level of success for the majority of the program's history. And that's being a team that can compete for SEC titles, that can compete for college football playoff spots. That's just where you are right now. But again, this is the schedule that was released tonight. And man, Joe, let me look at that, though. Close out the year. 4 home games.
I know. Yeah. And looking at it, 7 home games to 5, ultimately, that's a huge advantage.
You always have. Yeah. Look, and you'll have that. You'll have that. And that Charlotte game essentially will be a home game for North Carolina, yes. But at the same time, too, we saw how well the Gamecocks traveled for that Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would expect them to travel well for that game as well, and be able to. I don't want to say make it a home game for South Carolina, because you're in a different state, and literally that's North Carolina's backyard. But Gamecock fans travel well, and it's only a 90-minute ride. So I'm excited to see how things play out next year, but I'm excited to see how things play out this year. So we'll push that schedule aside. Appreciate that, Joe. We'll keep going down the list. Again, if you guys want to call into the program, I know we've been showing more so comments than anything else tonight. But if you want to call into the program, 803-567-3796. That is the number. Once again, 803-567-3796. We'll be taking you guys up until the 8 o'clock Eastern time hour on this Talking Tuesday night. Gamecocks getting ready to take on Charlotte this weekend after having a 1-2 start. Disappointing loss against Georgia, but 2 winnable games ahead of them before heading back into SEC play against Kentucky. So, again, looking through these comments, and before I have intern Joe hop on, because I know some people are being like, hey, look, we talk about some defense. Yeah, we're going to talk about the defense. We're going to talk about the defense. We'll talk about that because it needs to be done. And intern Joe will bring the heat on that. H-Man, wasn't that the worst loss we've ever had to Georgia, though? And at home? Yeah, it was. It was. 41 points, I believe. I think that's the most. I think that surpassed the mark going back to the late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not even going to try to justify it. It was bad. Georgia's a very good team, and you're a team right now that's trying to figure out who the heck you are. It's a recipe for disaster. Well, you get those two things. Add the fact that you had 5 starters missing on defense, too. That's a recipe for disaster, as well as a starting offensive lineman. Tony says, in my opinion, Spencer is pressing a lot. Trying to make something happen, just play and maybe roll him out more to give him more time to go through his progressions. I do feel like he's trying to force some things that we saw that with the Georgia game. I mean, it goes without saying, trying to look like Brett Favre out there, throwing off your back foot cross field, trying to back shoulder on a play that, I'm not a QB whisperer by any means, but listen to guys like Michael Scarnecchia that played the position. So they even said it's like that's the last spot you're going to leave it. You're going to leave that on his outside shoulder. Don't give the defender a chance to be able to catch that. But again, that's just one play. Hopefully that's the worst throw that Rattler makes all season, and he's able to learn from it. But I do feel like it's a combination of a couple things. I don't think it's just Rattler is trying to force things. I think he's having to force things because things just aren't there. Things just aren't there. Whether it be lack of separation on some of the routes, which, again, I can't sit here and tell you I've gone through every route and I've seen how much separation, but there were certainly plays last week where they just weren't able to create separation. Georgia's got some good players, though. But at the same time, too, you need to be able to find ways to create separation. That was an issue that South Carolina had for a couple seasons, going back to when Shi Smith was here. I mean, think about that year. My God. Shi was the only guy I felt like that could do anything consistently at that position that season. And when Shi was covered, again, going back to a phrase we used earlier, became a one-trick pony. And if you cannot get the ball to Shi, who are you going to throw to? Fortunately, they were able to have success on the ground with Kevin Harris, but from a passing standpoint, when you need to throw the football, just double Shi. Take Shi out of the game. Challenge someone else to step up and create separation, and South Carolina struggled to do that. So that's something I would point to as well going through these messages. Again, Hunter, if we're being honest, same result as last year. We just had one more garbage time touchdown. We'll be fine just year 2 with Beamer, and we'll do the best. He's doing the best for his job and for the program. I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at it like this. All right, 1-2 on paper, South Carolina. I think a lot of us expected them to start 1-2. All right, year 2, trying to figure things out. All right, Spencer Rattler's here. It's going to create buzz. I just think it's the manner in which South Carolina lost the other day. The fact that offensive line play looked better, but it just wasn't complementary. Like, it just didn't all go together from an offensive standpoint. The blocking, of course, wasn't great week 1, but that's not just the offensive line. I'm talking the tight ends missing some blocks. I'm talking about the receivers from a perimeter standpoint. Rattler forced some things. Rattler maybe stepped out of the pocket a little bit or stepped up in the pocket a little too soon week 1 because he was still trying to figure out his teammates in the offensive line. Then you go to the next week. All right, that's starting to be there a little bit, but South Carolina really didn't run the football. Goes back to the play calling. So I say all that because they need to be able to play complementary football. They just haven't been able to do that. And I'm not even talking about complementary offense, defense, special teams. That goes without saying. Complementary just as an offense. They need to be able to do that this week. They need to be able to do that this week. I know I'm behind with some of these comments. I don't think it's time to panic yet because we just faced the really good teams. Kind of glad that these down moments right now are happening. Week 4, week 5 needs to be improvements for you. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. even before the season, that's the way I looked at it. Because you need to be able to just say, hey, look, okay, it's 3 games in. Even though in the building, players might not be saying this amongst themselves, like, all right, hey, we're going to start the year 1-2. And then the season's going to start. But the season starts now. The season does. And I'm not going to do the whole popsicle headache thing of how do you get that number. But before the season, I said South Carolina would win 8 games in the regular season. Right now, if you had to ask me, I'd probably say 7. I'd say 7. And it has more so to do with the fact that South Carolina is banged up defensively than anything else. Because I'm just not sure who's going to be able to fill some of those roles and be able to do a job that you don't feel like is a huge drop-off from guys like not having like Jordan Strawn out there or Mo Kava. That concerns me the most. It really does. I feel like the offense will get better. I do. I feel like we're going to see it this week. Now, if we don't, then we'll grab that panic button. But right now, no. No. I do want to get to intern Joe, talk about some defense here, because I know we've been talking about the offense so much, Joe, ad nauseum.
Yeah.
But I know that today you talked a little bit about the defense. I know you wrote a story about Nick Eamon-Worry, who just continues to play out of his mind. And as we saw from Shane Beamer on the depth chart, he will be starting this week. And I think that's a good call. You know, no disrespect to R.J. Roderick. Not saying that it's a true Wally Pipp situation, for those of you that know that reference from baseball with Lou Gehrig. But I think he's earned it. I think he's earned it, especially being able to do it on the road at Arkansas, starting his first game of his collegiate career. Then he does it at home against the number 1 team in the country. And then he did some good things too, week 1 against Georgia State, certainly that huge 4th down stop. So I think it's very justifiable. There's going to be growing pains naturally that come with a true freshman. You know, things aren't always going to be perfect. He's going to have to continue to grow from a coverage standpoint. I feel like for the most part, he's held his own, but there's going to be areas that he can improve on. But that just comes with the growing pains naturally of having a young guy out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, article about Nick Eamon-Worry is coming out tomorrow morning. But yeah, I mean, Nick Eamon-Worry, it's kind of cool because he stayed at home, right? And he seems very comfortable at home. You know, the home cooking, he's eaten all of it and just, you know, really stepped up for this defense. When they needed him too, he ranks 4th in the SEC in tackles, and he's really only played 2 games. He had 3 tackles against Georgia State, saw some action, and again, Mike, you said that big 4th down stop. And then when he started the game against Arkansas and Georgia, he had 10 plus tackles. He's been going crazy, and especially as for a true freshman, you don't really see that. You know, coming in like as a first year player. And he started the 2 games that he started were, you know, the 2 biggest games of the year, arguably enough on South Carolina's schedule. And to be thrown into the fire like that and have him show as much as maturity as he has, you know, it's huge. So we get another call.
We got another call here. I'll let you take that real quick, and we'll have the caller hop on to continue to talk here tonight on GC Live, Talking Tuesday nights. Again, guys, we're going to be going up until the 8 o'clock hour. So if you want to be able to join the program, whether it be calling in, whether it be sending a message in, send them on in. I know we have some questions and comments that have been submitted throughout tonight's show that we haven't been able to get up quite yet, but we'll try to bring it on up. And I know Will, this is from a little while ago, you know, is it a home game versus UNC? Columbia is closer. I'm trying to remember to pull that up. It's a neutral sided game, so it's not being, you know, considered a home game for South Carolina. I don't believe. I feel like that was part of the agreement there, but we're going to have intern Joe.
We got Caleb on the line. Caleb, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted to get your opinion on what can really be done at this point in the season on the offense. I don't know if you stated before because I just kind of joined, but at this point, do you think it would be something feasible to maybe switch the role behind the scenes, like have someone else call plays? Do you think he should outright fire him to maybe light a spark for the players? I mean, what do you think can be done at this point in the season? And that's all I have for you.
Well, I appreciate you calling into the program. Look, I'll go back to what Michael Skarnecki has said the other day. You're not going to fire an offensive coordinator right now. You're just not, for two reasons. And one that he didn't even bring up. I'll tell you what the other reason is. First reason is, what are you going to do? Who are you going to go out there and get? You're not. You're not going to be able to. And if you do, you're not going to change your whole offensive system in the middle of the year. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. We see sometimes where teams will, an offensive coordinator, right? An offensive coordinator will go take a job somewhere else, maybe for a head coaching position, maybe in the NFL, whatever the case may be. But you don't see it happen in the middle of the season where someone's going to come on and just change the whole offense, because that's just not the case. So I bring that up, number one. Number two, and this is something that Scar didn't bring up, but I think if you're Shane Beamer, it's just a bad look upon you, right? You bring in a guy, and you're going to be judged based on the guys that you hire as assistant coaches. I think it's just a bad look if you get rid of a guy after, what would it be, 16 games? That's how many they've played so far, going back to last season. It's just a bad look upon Shane, and he knows that. Ultimately, he's going to do what he believes is going to be the best interest of the team. But at the same time, too, that's certainly in the back of his head, because you are going to be judged based on who you bring into the program. And if we remember what happened and how that all transpired, right, and how it all played out, Beamer got on campus. Beamer hired his coaching staff. Mike Bobo was retained as the QB, coach, and the offensive coordinator. And what happened? Bobo left. Bobo left after getting his buddy, Will Friend. Will Friend came over to be the offensive line coach, and it looks like things were going to be all sunshine and rainbow on offense in terms of being able to get a coaching staff together, guys that know each other, because you need to be able to have the offensive coordinator and the O-line coach. They need to be on the same page. They have to be on the same page. Well, not only does Bobo bolt for Auburn, but Will Friend, of course, bolted for Auburn as well, and now Bobo is with Georgia as an analyst. So I bring all that up because that's how we got to the point where we are with Satterfield. I don't think Satterfield's a bad offensive coordinator. I just think there's some things that have not worked out at South Carolina because maybe some of these guys just aren't, I don't know, maybe it's just, it doesn't suit the skills that they have. Or maybe they're just not being utilized the way that they should. Maybe he has a vision that he wants to be able to do, and it's just not getting done. And ultimately that comes back to looking yourself in the mirror and saying, okay, what do we got to do to reamp this, to be able to fix things? So I expect Satterfield to tweak things a little bit this weekend. And I know some people are going to be like, well, what makes you feel that way? We haven't seen it through week 2, week 3. I get that. Matchup's different this weekend, though. Matchup's different. I'm not saying that South Carolina went into the game against Arkansas and Georgia with their butt cheeks friggin' so tight together, basically saying like, oh, shoot, we can't do anything. But you can play a little bit looser this week. You can. You have to play a little bit looser. You can't be friggin' just sitting there just thinking like, oh, boy, like, you know, everything, something bad's going to happen. You know, oh, boy, Johnny's going to go tweet about me, or, oh, this is going to be saying the message board. You can't. You can't worry about that. So go out there and just play. Just play and realize that you can do some things this weekend that you weren't going to be able to do last week just because, or in terms of just gaining confidence, because you're going up against a Georgia team where the margin of error is already so small. Like the fact that you have to go up against a team like that and you have to try to find ways to stay competitive against them based on where you are right now and what you're trying to do in terms of trying to create for the future. Just they're not on the same page right now. They're not on the same level. But South Carolina was able to find some holes out there. They were able to find some seams. We saw that deep pass with Jaheim Bell. They weren't able to continue to have that success in the vertical game, though, after that, for the most part. So I think this week, what we'll see South Carolina try to gain confidence by running the football. And the reason why I believe that is because you should be able to do that against Charlotte. That's not saying Charlotte's pushovers. They beat Georgia State last week, but they don't have the same type of defensive line like Georgia does, like Arkansas does. And if you're able to go out there and physically establish your dominance and your presence, that will be able to give your players some confidence. And then you can be able to go off from that. So I expect that. I expect the tight ends to be used a little bit more, whether it be across the middle or just getting the ball across the middle to receivers, running back, whatever the case may be. I expect that to be the case this weekend. The rollouts, I mean, it's hard to say right now just because with Charlotte, you should be able to have success with being able to drop back. And then if Rattler wants to get out of the pocket, that's fine. But maybe that's something that Rattler and Satterfield have discussed, saying, hey, look, I want more rollouts, or hey, I feel more comfortable on this play when I roll out opposed to just dropping back. So yeah, could see some tweaks up there. But I mean, these guys are still trying to figure each other out. It's a work in progress. And I feel like this week we will see improvements. If we don't, again, I'll grab the panic button and I'll put it out there for everybody. I do know that we're up against time right now. I do want to hit on some of the defense, though. I know we brought it up, though, with Joe, but I do want to bring up some things from a defensive standpoint. One thing that's been bothering me with this defense, because, some people are going to be like, hey, you're making excuses. They'll be the same people that will complain, oh, we're getting held every play. No, you're not. No, you're not. South Carolina needs to do a better job of getting off blocks on the perimeter. 3 weeks in a row. 3 weeks in a row. This isn't just last week. Well, Georgia's holding us. No. This happened against Arkansas, too. This happened week 1. Week 1 against Georgia State. There's a reason why South Carolina has allowed over 200 yards rushing a game this season. Over 200 a game. They were ranked 129th in the country going into the last game. And guess what? Wow, improvement. You're only allowing 233 yards and a half a game now. Ranked 125 in the country. 125th in the country. So I say that because when you talk about not just these two games coming up, but Kentucky in a couple weeks, teams feel like, hey, we're not afraid of South Carolina. We're going to try to run the football. And if it's not running the ball, it's going to do what they're going to do what Georgia did last week, which is an extension of the run game. Swing passes, screen passes, throws to the flats. It's an extension of the run game. And when they're able to get the ball, what happens? Just like running a ball off tackle. They get out to the perimeter and now put your cornerback or nickelback, whoever the case may be, being able to get off the block. Sometimes even an outside linebacker, safety that's down in the box. You need to be able to get off the blocks. So is that the main issue as to why South Carolina has been struggling from a run defense standpoint? No, there's some other issues there. But that's something that I've noticed. Joe, I know you said go for Caleb. I may have missed that a little bit earlier. So sorry, Caleb. Called on in. But look, bottom line is this. When you're 3 games into the season and you've played the schedule that South Carolina has played thus far, and there's not a lot of positives to talk about, it's going to come across as negative sometimes. You're not going to be able to throw out, everything that's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But at the same time, too, you don't need to hit the panic button. There's that fine line of being in between that right now. And I think that's where we are with South Carolina, where you can be critical of the team. You can look at areas and say, okay, this is where they need to get better. That's where they need to get better. We don't need to start firing people left and right. Not yet. And South Carolina is not going to do that. And if you're someone that says, all right, this person needs to get fired, I get it, but it's not going to happen. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But what I would suggest is kind of just focusing on what South Carolina is dealing with in terms of the cards that they are playing. And the cards are, this is the staff they have. This is the players they have. They need to find a way to be able to get that confidence this week against Charlotte, to be able to turn around the mojo and just the energy with this program heading into week 5 and then heading into week 6 against Kentucky. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. 1-2 does not shock me that South Carolina is 1-2. That's what I had going back to my preseason predictions. The issue is they need to be able to show improvements from week 1 to week 2. And it didn't even necessarily have to be on the scoreboard last week. You could have lost to Georgia and still feel a little good about yourself. I know people don't like moral victories, but guess what? You're in a different boat than Georgia right now. There's a reason why you have a coach in his second year at this program. And he's doing what he can do, the best he can, to be able to get some new good recruits in here because he's trying to fix something that was thrown off the rails. So you got to just realize the reality of it. There's going to be moral victories along the way. That's just how it is. You're not just going to be able to line up against Georgia and line up against some of these teams and expect them to be able to beat them every week. I think the majority of the fan base understands that, but I do think there's a lot of people that just assume, like, all right, no moral victories, this and that. It's not going to work out that way. Yeah, let's talk about some more positives too. Kroger and Jeter have been solid this year. They have. I know Kai had one bad punt. I think it was his first one against Arkansas in week 2. But other than that, he's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. Another Ray Guy nomination this week. He has been incredible. And give a lot of credit to Jeter as well. Going into the season, and this isn't to say Alex Herrera is not a good kicker, but going into the year, there was a toss-up. There was a toss-up between who would be the kicker. Would it be Jeter? Would it be Herrera? Jeter has made the most out of his opportunity. He's playing like a guy, and I'm not saying this is the case, but he's playing like a guy, at least the first couple of weeks, that knows, like, hey, I got to go out there and make these kicks, because if not, we have another guy right behind me. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So Jeter has been incredible. But as we all know, with that position, it's not what have you done, it's what have you done for me lately. And Jeter needs to be able to continue to do that. And he certainly has proven that he has the leg. And we can give credit to Hunter Rogers as well. Absolutely. Hunter Rogers has been playing phenomenal as well. A lot of the guys on the special teams. And I mean, that's just the testament to obviously the investment they put into the program, starting with Shane Beamer, trickling down to having a guy like Pete Lembo that you name as your special teams coordinator, which a lot of programs don't have. They'll have guys that are the linebacker coach / special teams coach. No, I mean, this is great. And I know some people would say, okay, well, they spend a little bit more time on offense or defense. That's not what it is. That's not what it is. It's about going out there and executing. And that's what South Carolina has to do this week. So before we wrap up, I'm going to bring on intern Joe one more time for just some last thoughts. Joe, trying to end things with some positive here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As we mentioned Jeter and blanking here. Sorry there, Kai. He was one of the first guys to get the Ufa biscuit. Unbelievable. What a hand bone by me. But I don't know if there's anything in particular that grabs your attention that you want to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, Kai Kroger, he was up on the press conference stand today, and he was all happy about his completion with the fake punt. There were jokes about how he was talking to Sad about maybe asking to get some reps at quarterback. Kai was very, very, very happy today, and obviously he deserves it. He's a Ray Guy punter award nominee of the week again for the second straight week. So I mean, Kai's been doing some things right. Special teams have been just going right, and I mean, look at Pete Lembo too, a character in and of himself. So it's pretty easy to see when you have a character like that leading a group that requires a little bit of weird amongst them. So no wonder things are going right. And I mean, especially for Kai too. So maybe he'll get some reps at quarterback. We'll see.
We're going a little bit longer here tonight. Obviously, for those of you that do follow me, I work over at Gamecock Central. Maybe just follow me on Twitter. You guys know that I'm double dipping this fall, working up in Boston. Got off a little while ago. So typically it's a hard 8 o'clock out, but we'll go a little bit longer here. Answer some of these questions, and then we'll wrap things up. So I'll give you some bonus time here. Joey says, can you develop continuity each year by going into the transfer portal, every year for skill positions? I think it's yes and no. is yes and no, and that's not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. But what I mean by that is this: yes, you can. You can. You look at, and I know it's just 1 year because this is still new for a lot of programs, so we don't have a lot to be able to work off of. But you look at what South Carolina was able to do with the guys from the transfer portal last year, and I know that call me a homer. You're damn right I'm a homer from Assumption. Seeing what Carlins Patel was able to do at nickel, and he did a tremendous job. And he's with the Steelers right now. So I say that because you can have success. What it comes down to is you need to bring in the right guys. Number one, from a character standpoint, you need to have guys that are going to buy into the program, and you're going to need to have guys that in that locker room understand what's all about. And you need coaches that are going to preach that message when they go out through recruiting, that, hey, look, transfer portal, that's part of the game. You come here, you're going to compete. And if you want to, you want to be on the field, you're going to know that you earned it against the best. So obviously that's much easier said than done because you can quickly lose that. If you have guys that come in here from the portal and things aren't going well, it's real easy to be like, wait a minute, I was here, I was starting, now I'm not because there's a guy from the portal here. Like, this is BS, this and that. So yeah, you could quickly lose all that. So it starts with the guys that you bring in there, and you have to be cognitive of that. Beamer's cognitive of that. This coaching staff's cognitive of that. But there's going to be some things that you can't control until you get to a situation. So that's what I would say about that. Trying to go through a little bit more, and I can get Joe into the mix here if he wants to be able to throw some things out there. Travis, we appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you too. WJM41. Appreciate you guys watching tonight. I will say this, though. I mean, we talk about some of these things about, okay, the good, the bad, the ugly, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, in the show on this show, what's one thing you want to see this weekend? It could be from the offense. It could be from the defense. It could be big picture. It could be from a play. What do you want to see? What does intern Joe want to see this weekend from South Carolina?
Personally, from the defense, I think it all starts with turnovers. We haven't forced a turnover.
This is why you're the best, Joe. Yeah. Look at you. We didn't even bring up turnovers.
We haven't forced a turnover in 2 weeks. And I mean, last season we averaged 1.3 turnovers a game, I think it was, leading the SEC. So it's been a big preaching point for Clayton White's defense, and we haven't gotten any yet. I mean, this defense just hasn't generated any yet. And so I think, in the long run, to generate a little bit of momentum here going down through the season, you're going to need some turnovers. And I think if they can capitalize on Charlotte in a big way and force a lot of turnovers, it'll just keep carrying and carrying. Because we know, Mike, I'm sure you play DB, so you know this as well as I do. Turnovers come in bunches. And so when you can get them, you're going to take them just try to keep that momentum rolling. But yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And look, -6. That is the plus minus right now for turnover South Carolina over the last 2 weeks. 3 turnovers the last 2 weeks, 0 turnovers on the other side of it. They need to be able to get the ball. They need to. Joe, glad you brought that up because that was something that helped this defense out a lot last year. I'm going to talk about what was the difference with being able to turn the defense around to a point at least where it looked, I don't want to say night and day different, but at least it looked like it was like, okay, there's an improvement on the defense. It wasn't just a fresh coat of paint. Right now, that's the fear. The fear is it was just a fresh coat of paint and it was just one layer. And that one layer starting to peel off. You can't let that happen. And that's not to say this defense, isn't good and it was just a slab of paint making them look good last year. No. We're 3 games in against 2 very good teams, against 3 good teams. Give Georgia State credit too. I hate when people say this, they're the best 0-3 team in the country. Georgia State has been in like all these games. I feel bad for Georgia State. I mean, they easily could be sitting here today with a much different outlook on just life. But that just isn't the case right now for Georgia State. Well, guys, we're going to wrap things up here. We're going to have the post-game show on Saturday night, the GC Live post-game show. Perry Orth will be back with us. If you missed any of the comments from Michael Scarnecchia from over the weekend on the GC Live post-game show, you can go back on our YouTube page, which is just continuing to blow up. We appreciate everyone that continues to subscribe there because, look, you can do it for free. You're not a GC member. That's okay. We'd like you to be a GC member. You can take advantage of it. I think it's what? You get 10 months for $1 right now. I mean, that's a great deal. I mean, the holidays are right around the corner. You know, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Basketball, Gigi Jackson. Why not? Why not? But the YouTube page, you can be able to get all our video content, and it's like kind of having a DVR. You can go back and watch it whenever you want. And in addition to this, because I know there's some people that are listening to us right now, you can also listen to every GC Live post-game show and the GC Live Talking Tuesday shows on podcasts. We also do that on podcasts as well. So, Joe, appreciate you tonight, buddy. Always a good guy. You know, always getting things done. We appreciate everyone that listened tonight. We're going to do it again next Tuesday. GC Live Talking Tuesday nights.
Sorry.